This is Inside the Game, where passion meets precision. Jonathan Turner, Nathan Wangler, and John Natale are your hosts, breaking down every goal, every controversy, every match that matters. From the heart of American soccer to the global stage. No fluff, just football. Weekdays at 9 a.m. live on YouTube, Roku TV, Facebook, Twitter, and all listening platforms.
Welcome to Inside the Game on the National Soccer Network. Now, here are your hosts, Jonathan Turner, Nathan Wangler, and John Natale.
Good morning, good morning, good morning. Happy Thursday. It's Thirsty Thursday. I'm thirsty. I know Natale is thirsty as well because not only did we have games yesterday and podcasts, but John, just so much going on and couldn't be happier with what you were able to. It just keeps going. But we couldn't be happier about how yesterday went. We had a total of 9 broadcasts yesterday on the network, and we were supposed to have 15, but 5 teams just failed to call us. When that happens, you can't produce a game. But regardless, we were able to pull those 9 games off. John, you were part of, what is that, 20% of those games?
Yeah.
Yeah, 20%. So I was part of, all 9 because I was producing them in some level. But, and Nathan, you were part of one yourself last night, USL League 2 action, right? Midwest United. I mean,
a nail biter for Wangler.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I mean, it was. I guess the part of the nail biter part was how many goals. What was the over under on that game? Was it plus or minus 12?
I said something like that. Yeah,
6-0 was the final score of that game. But interesting enough, if I look at yesterday for what it was in Great Lakes action in USLW and USL2 yesterday, just on our network in those 3 games, Flint City Bucks 4-0. Right? Your game, 6-0 Midwest United. USLW, 3-0. So with 13 goals in those 3 games yesterday, and the winning team obviously didn't let anything in. So, I mean, talk about a crazy day of scoring yesterday in USL League 2 and W action.
So for the both of you, because JT, you had that Flint City game early, and then Nate, you had the Midwest United game. Was there any offense from either Oakland or who was the opponent for you, Northern Indiana?
Yeah.
I mean, did they sniff the other 18 at all?
Early, very early. Like when that match just started, yeah, they had a couple of good buildups. They had a few good opportunities to begin, but no, past that point, no, Midwest United controlled things really much end to end. And I said this on the broadcast because they only formed in 2023. That team only began 2 years ago. They were in the Midwest Premier League last year. They did really well. They won their conference, nearly won a championship, but this is their first year in the USL too. And I almost kind of phrased it in a way of like almost kind of like their welcome to the league moment. Like they jumped into a higher league and now they're kind of taking their lumps and their bruises. But no, Midwest United, yeah, controlled it beginning to end. And then Northern Indiana took a tough red to begin the second half. So they were playing down a man essentially for half that match. So yeah, through and through, that was a beatdown.
Yeah, and if I look at my game, it was weird because we talked, me and Dan talked about on the broadcast yesterday, is that how Oakland County, so Union FC Macomb had won their first 2 matches of the season over Midwest United and over Kalamazoo, right? So they were 2-0. You then had Union FC Macomb play Oakland. It was their first game of the season, and they got beaten 3-0. Right. So you go, okay, wow. Okay. So maybe Oakland, and Flint's obviously been like the staple. We talk about it. Flint is, if the gold standard of the USL League 2, Flint City Bucks is in that top echelon of consistency and history. Right. So we know that. And so you look at that and go, okay, well, they're playing against this team that just beat up their first game. They were, the first game of the season, you win 3-0 over a team that's got 2 games ahead of you. That's a weird, kind of a weird score line. And then you go in and you just get walloped at 11 o'clock in the morning on a Thursday. I mean, the first goal of that game was arguably one of the worst goals I've ever seen. It was so bad that we didn't even know it went in. Like me and Dan were in the middle of a conversation. And to be fair, maybe it's a curse because I was literally talking about great goalkeeping and how the goalkeeper for Oakland is a really good goalkeeper. We were talking about how great of a goalkeeper he was. And then the ball comes back to him and he's playing with it. And in comes Steven Morea from Flint City with a slide tackle and just gets in front of it and just kind of falls in the back of the net. I mean, I didn't even know it went in until after, like, because I'm literally like, okay, this is a pass back, typical play, right? And the goalkeeper mistake or defensive miscue and whatever you want to call it. And that was all she wrote. And it was 1-0, 8 minutes in. And Flint, ended up scoring 3 more goals. They probably could have scored 20 more goals. That's how good Flint is. I mean, Flint is a very good soccer team. And, we're going to talk this morning with an executive director of FC Pride Elite based out of Indianapolis, Indiana. I had a chance to meet Jamie in person back at the AGM, also known as Middle Indiana, just in case we were going to get into that.
But he got to it before I did. He saw my lip curl and he got to it before
the one thing I learned a long time ago is that in sales is that you got to get the objection out of the way right away. So I got to let it out, right? So I got it out. Now the objection's gone. I'm good. But we're going to have and I met Jamie down at the AGM in Oklahoma City here back in February when we were going out there to talk about the WPSL and how we were going to help manage the productions and handle all these games for them this season. And Jamie was I was walking out of the room and he grabbed me. He's like, man, we need to talk. And he handed me his card and I was able to touch base with Jamie and really, really impressed with what FC Pride is doing in Indianapolis, Indiana. Again, you don't know these things until you start to meet people. Again, we were based here in Michigan, right? Now we're across the country and I'm learning and meeting new teams and new ownership, new leadership, and it's really kind of refreshing to have an opportunity to talk with Jamie. So we'll talk with Jamie Gilbert this morning here in just a few minutes. But yesterday, during our broadcast here in Michigan, we were doing something in honor of Rob Ruda. We had talked about this on Monday. We had put his picture up on our screen. Robert Ruda, a longtime Michigan referee who passed away tragically on Friday in a car accident in Georgia, is well known in the refereeing community in the Midwest, well known in the refereeing community specifically in Michigan, and obviously at 48 years young, he tragically passed away. And what I told the referee community here yesterday was that we would be honoring Robert all weekend long in our broadcast. And we'll continue to do that because it's the right thing to do. And granted, I don't know every referee that passes away. I don't, right? But I had a chance to get to know Robert over the last many years while we're doing these broadcasts, especially when we were out on site. And we'll continue to talk about Robert and what he was able to do in the soccer community here in Michigan and across the country. I mean, I was just talking with Jason Cross, the referee from USL's the Flint City Bucks game yesterday. And we were talking about, what his impact has been with him and how they traveled all across the country, the U.S. Youth Nationals. I mean, this is a referee that was a national assistant referee. So he was doing games at a high level. But we'll continue to honor him in our broadcast this weekend by putting up an image on the screen and showing Rob Ruda, and what he was able to do in his legacy in soccer in this state and across the country. But I want to make sure I let people know that again. So I know we did it last night in your game, Nathan. I know we did it in a couple of your games, John, last night. We did it, I think, in most all the games that we did.
Yeah, it was yesterday was tough. When we first found out about Rob and we had our discussion about it, and you talk about your relationship with him, JT, and Nate and I, we didn't know him personally, but we knew who he was. That's just how great of a guy and man he was, both on and off the field. And what was really tough yesterday for me was the last time that I got any contact with Rob was that last match that I did at the Michigan Stars Sports Center in Washington Township. He called that last match in the first match of the USA SA Cup. And to go back there 2 weeks later and just kind of realize that, that was the last time I saw him. And so it was a very, I don't even know how to put it because I'm getting a little choked up thinking about it, but I don't want to say a humbling moment, but to know that, I was able to do a match with Rob, towards the unfortunate end of his career and be in the same building that I saw a great match between for the Michigan Stars there. And I apologize again. I don't like talking about that stuff, but we are doing the right thing because he was such a pillar. And again, not just in the soccer community, but just as a man in general, we're going to miss him.
Yeah, what's sobering about it is how quickly it can happen. And I think sometimes we lose sight on that. And when you lose sight on that perspective, you just have to realize that, and I realize it's oversaid, but today might be your last, so the importance in finding how you make an impact on whatever community it is. It could be the soccer community, it could be anywhere else. How do you make a positive impact on the people around you? And I think Rob, through what he did, found that purpose. He found it in an area that not a lot of people want to work in, and understandably so. Refereeing, umpiring, whatever it is. I mean, your job is to essentially serve the people that you are working for, and oftentimes in a very thankless position. And I think we've talked about that. And for Rob, his life's work in a lot of ways was exactly that. All those matches you think he was a part of, that they couldn't have happened if it wasn't for him, what he did. And for the rest of those refereeing crews. So that's the part that always gets to me. And I hate that we always have to have these subtle reminders that it is right there and we're living on borrowed time, but it's a matter of what do we do with the time that we do have. And I think Rob did a marvelous job, not only finding his purpose, but making an impact on the people he was around.
Yeah. As somebody who refereed for over 20 years, I can tell you that the referees that do this to get to the level that Rob was at, and not all referees are like that, right? Some referees come in varying degrees of what experience and what they want to accomplish in life, and there's a lot of different reasons as to why you might want to become a referee. Some do it for to get some exercise. Others do it for the money. There's a lot of different reasons, right? And I would argue that probably 1 out of 100 referees gets really excited, or 2 out of every 100 referees gets really excited about the opportunity of what could come ahead, right? What the next level might look like, right? And so you think about that for a second. That's a very small percentage of the amount of referees that go through the process and become one, and they actually want to maybe go somewhere with it, right? And that's probably why a lot of coaches, and I'm sure when we talk with Jamie, the same thing about referees in general, frustration, because their players work so hard, right? They're training 5 days, 6 days, 7 days a week. They're playing games. They want to go out there. They want to compete. And if there's a decision that comes into a game and that somehow prohibits a team from being successful in that moment, the easiest person to blame is the one in yellow. It's the easiest person. But if only people knew what referees were doing to get there. Because I can tell you this right now, guys like Robert Ruda are working their tails off to get there. They're running just as much as the next. They're working out. They're studying games. They're getting game film. They're going out there and they're being evaluated every single time they step on the pitch. Every time. They go into a USL League 2 matchup, a USLW matchup, a national game, USL champion. Doesn't matter. Those games are always being evaluated. So those players, those referees are doing just as much as a player when it comes to prep. And so when you're at that level, everything is on the line, both for players, for coaches, for ownership, and for referees. And that's why there's so much scrutiny now on referees, especially at the highest levels, because they are under the microscope just as much as a player would be. And the referee's job is to get it right. Just to get it right. And I always said that to coaches. I would walk up to a coach like Jamie before a game, be like, hey, my job is to get it right. I'm going to get it wrong sometimes. It's going to happen. I get that you're going to want to yell at me. I get it. But here's the deal. If you and I both have a good relationship where if you want to yell at me, that's fine. Just don't cross that line. Don't say things that are going to make me have to do anything about it. But you want to come to me man to man, we'll talk. I can deal with that. But I can't deal with the other stuff. But you want to have it out with me? By all means. And if you want to go out in the locker room after the game and have a conversation privately, what you want to rip into me, I can take it. And most importantly, I would walk in after a moment I made a mistake and say, hey, I screwed up. I know it doesn't mean anything to you, but I screwed up. And I'm going to learn from this and make it better so it doesn't happen again. I can't guarantee it, but I screwed up, and I wanted to let you know I screwed up. And so Rob is one of those guys that would be willing to do that. You know, guys like Jason Cross are willing to walk up to coaches and say, yeah, I screwed up, man. My bad. I'm sorry. I made a mistake. No different than when your guy went to take a shot and he missed it. His cleat went flying into the bleachers and the ball went 80 feet in the air. I mean, like, that's a shitty shot. I mean, didn't do it on purpose. If you go back again, he would take a better shot. It's like, you know, it's the same thing. I mean, we all make, and to be fair, I would say the exact same thing to a player. When a player would walk up to me and say, hey, you know, that was a bad call. Oh, okay, fair enough. And then 5 minutes later, they would take a shitty shot. I walk right up to them and that was a shitty shot. You can't say that to me, ref. I go, why not? You just said I did a bad call. Why can't I comment on your shitty play? It was shitty. I mean, and he's like, oh, and then the next time it comes around, he's like, oh, bad call, ref. Like, I know. I'm shitty, just like you. You know, we would have those kind of back and forths, but that's how you build that kind of rapport with players, and that's how they don't, you know, you find that level playing ground, and that's what I did. But hey, enough about that. Let's get Jamie on. What better time to bring Jamie on and talk about refereeing and our relationships with ref? But Jamie Gilbert, man, welcome into the podcast. Happy to have you here.
Good morning, guys. Thank you for having me on.
Well, we're excited to have you, and I know we kind of came in on the tail end of a referee conversation. We talked about a little bit of, you know, kind of leading up to our show here this morning. Before we dive into anything related to refereeing, I wanted to touch base with, or at least open this up about FC Pride. You know, if the first-time viewers hearing about what FC Pride is all about and what you guys are trying to accomplish in the Indianapolis area, what would that be?
I think we have a very defined identity of who we are. We're not trying to get 2,000-3,000 kids in the club by any means. We are around that in terms of competitive players, about 800, 850. To us, we would rather service them professionally and well and try and know everybody at the club than expand into third, fourth, fifth teams. I think we do a really, really good job with our top end teams. I don't think we do a very good job with third, fourth, fifth teams. So in that case, our business model is first, second teams at the oldest age groups and trying to, you know, build a pyramid of a big base that we can then fold into senior teams going forward. But I would say we're a club where you're going to get a very, very personal touch with it. You'll know all the coaching staff. I would like to think it's a professional environment, well run, well organized, and yeah, we're trying to compete. So.
It's a great point, but as an executive director of FC Pride, I would imagine on some level, because we talk about this a lot on this show, about how you need money in order to do the things that you want to do, right? I mean, unfortunately, in the world of soccer, it takes money. I mean, there's rental fees, there's uniform fees, there's travel fees, there's, you know, all these fees, and that's why a lot of clubs have expanded to so many teams and so many players, because those fees help generate revenue that can help pay for things like facilities. How do you find that balance? Because I'd imagine on some level you have to make those decisions. Okay, well, we're not going to do this then, or we're going to do that, or we have to be somewhat cautious about how we spend because we aren't trying to go after all these teams.
So I got here 15 years ago, and after 5 years, took my current job, and I think the first thing we did was streamline costs, streamline staff, make sure the model works. We've dived into dollars and cents of how profitable is each kid at our club. The answer is not very. Once you take all the costs away and you soccer like you described. Tournaments are a big thing for us, so we run 2-3 tournaments a year. Bring a lot of teams into the Indianapolis area. Our recent spring tournament, I think it was around 250 teams. At its highest, there's been 320. That's a big event for us. Takes a lot of resource to get something like that on, but we're lucky in the fact that we've got a massive grass complex that we can host these tournaments. So that helps. And, you know, I think we've just been creative with fundraising, sponsorship, different things. We run a 24-hour marathon every 2 years where kids come in and play for 24 hours straight. And that's been a really, really good fundraiser for us that everybody enjoys, and they get sponsors to play. The coaches all play the 3 a.m. to 4 a.m. shift, which is always interesting. But yeah, just getting creative, making sure that we're not overspending, streamlined staff that has been very, very good, very successful. So we found a way that we can now support these programs like the NPSL, WPSL, and help us grow competitively at those levels.
So I got to get the white elephant out of the room. Is that, JT, you've held the title of best hair on the show for a long time. Between Nate, myself, and you had it. There was one hell of a battle yesterday with you and Sinclair, though. I mean, it was close. I still give it to you. Tim, I think, was a little light on the gel, but Jamie, you came in here styling, man. You win best hair.
Good. I'm going to clip this and send it to my barber because he's going to love that. That's Black Orchid Barbers in Indianapolis. I might get
That's good work.
now.
But Jamie, I want to ask you, being here in Circle City in Indianapolis and what you guys have been able to become in your own right, and what it's a very niche following that you guys have, because we know about the Indy 11 and what they've been able to draw over the past 12 years since their inception here. What's that biggest challenge been like for you? Because you do have players that could probably go either way on their academy side versus yours. And I don't know as far as what your position is versus your counterpart over at Indy 11, but how have you managed, or are there plans to say, you know what, we do have something special here out in Lawrence Township? How do we start expanding that brand for you? Not necessarily to be on par with Indy 11, but at least getting that conversation about quality soccer here in Indianapolis.
So I think the key to that is actually the relationship between the clubs is very good. And a lot of people look at it on face value and think that we must hate each other, and we don't. Myself and Phil Presser, who's doing the same job as me with their academy. Me and Phil get on really well, and Joe on the women's and girls side. So on the girls side, we've been battling in the ECNL. They've had a really good season this year. We've been kind of on a par for a while on the girls side. Boys side, they offer a higher program than we do with the MLS Next, which has been considered since the days of the developmental academy. We have always probably pushed a player that we feel could go pro into their setup. I've sat in meetings with players and Phil and said, look, do this, go and take the chance. And you know what? Some of them come back. Some of them go on to great things. Some of the Indy 11 players that have made it as young kids into their roster have come from us. So that's a good moment for us. It reflects well on what we're doing at a younger age group and how we develop kids. But ultimately, if there's an opportunity for them to go pro, we will help them and support them in that journey. Likewise, there's a lot of players that feel they should go pro and probably can't. So we've got to be realistic and keep them in house. But you've got the Cincinnatis of the world, Columbus as well, Nashville now, St. Louis, who are all looking at our players, and the ECNL showcase events. You've got pro scouts out there all the time now for the boys. So it's great for exposure at our club. We've been very, like I said earlier, our identity is defined. We're going to help these kids try and get into college first, as we think that's our niche in the market. Every year we're putting between 30 to 40 players into college programs. So if you're coming to FC Pride, you're probably doing that because you want to get onto the college circuit at some point. We've networked really, really well in the college game. And that's probably where we're specialized in helping a player come in. Where can we get you on the college map?
Jamie, something that I mentioned actually a couple of times on this podcast, and especially talking with John and his understanding, being a Hoosier, being in that state, he's seen a lot of really good teams. Indy 11, Fort Wayne, they got a really good squad. There's a really good group of talented players in that state. What can you say about the crop of players that you've been able to work with? Is there anyone that stands out in your mind in terms of the player development side that you've been able to kind of get to the next level?
Well, on the women's side, I'll probably talk about Maya Watford. So Maya was with us when she was 10 years old. And in January, I did her speech into the Murray State Hall of Fame. She went in with Ja Morant and Quincy Williams.
Wow.
So for Maya at FC Pride, it was a good night for us.
Decent.
But yeah, it was honestly an honor to do her speech and see her inducted into the Hall of Fame. She went into that conference and set records for goals. So that's someone that we've taken literally from Lawrence Township and moved all the way through. She went out to Iceland for a couple of years, played pro, and now she's working at George Mason as, I think it's head of communications in the sports department. So in terms of what we can help facilitate at our club, that's a great story. And then you've got the Diego Sanchez on the men's side, who's playing for Indy 11 or was playing for Indy 11. He started with us. We developed him at younger ages, and then he went on to great things with Indy 11. So it's definitely it's the same format on girls and boys. Obviously, the college side of things, there's a lot more exposure in girls soccer than boys soccer because that's the way the environment is at the moment. So.
Just real quick, Jamie, I want to talk about a player that has yet to play for you, but I've been excited about because I got his exposure over at Butler when he won Big East Freshman of the Year. And you've got Palmer Alt coming to your club soon once he gets back from vacation. That's got to be exciting for you.
Yeah, he's on the roster for tomorrow in Michigan. So him and Kabiri, we're excited about them two linking up. Kabiri's had a good start for us.
He has.
So that the chance to get them both on the field together is going to be tomorrow night. We're hoping for some fireworks. But yeah, Palmer's, I will say, just the way he holds everyone to a standard in training has been excellent. He's come in and raised the level in training for sure. Great player to work with. Really, really enjoyed having him on the facility so far. So.
Speaking of Palmer Alt, I had a chance to call his name last summer for Flint City Bucks.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah,
yeah, scored a few goals, right?
Yeah, quite a few. I mean, some really, really fantastic finishes. Palmer Alt's a really good player, and
good. We're excited to have him for sure.
So, we talk about this model in this country in soccer all the time. We talk about the player moms and dads now are more aware of club soccer than ever before, right? The parent today is, when it comes to the club environment, is probably a smarter parent than they were 20 years ago. And that's probably because a lot of parents have already played soccer in the club environment at some level, and their kids are now playing in it. So there's that component to this. The component to that, now that we have like 400 professional leagues now showing up in this country, right? You've got USL Championship, USL League One, this new Super League. That's with women's, the NWSL, the MLS. We have the new division coming for the top echelon of USL coming here in a couple of years. Players now more than ever have this ability to say, I can continue playing on past college and do so maybe at a higher level. They can also go across the pond if they want to, because some players choose to do that, maybe play in that 6th, 7th division over across the pond. How do you navigate that? And you mentioned it. There are a lot of players that think they can go pro, and you're like, probably can't, right? And you want to facilitate them going to college, which, that's a process in itself too. But how do you navigate the parent today who's like really driven on their child and their player playing at a high level? And managing that environment, because I would imagine that environment is very different than it was 15 years ago.
It is. I think there's now an expectancy when the players come into the club that they're going to go to college. I remember actually the first players that I helped facilitate the kind of college journey, the mum and dad sent me to a U2 concert in Chicago to say thanks. Now it's we don't get as many thank you cards now because it's kind of expected that these players are going to come in and get into the college world. So I think for us, we have to be very open with the parents and the players about where they're at. It's difficult. I mean, in England, you got to 16, 17. If you hadn't played pro, you were done. Because then you're working down the leagues, like you said, to the 4th, 5th, 6th level. Because, I mean, Wayne Rooney made his debut when he was 16. So you're looking at a 16-year-old in Europe would be playing in a first team, or they're working their way down the leagues. Over here, obviously, the college process slows that down a bit, even though it's started to accelerate now with more and more players going into the league early over the last kind of 4 or 5 years. But I think we just have to be very, very open. We have a lot of college coaches on staff at FC Pride, which is a benefit. So if parents want to talk about what they see and where they evaluate their child. But yeah, I mean, we're never going to get past the fact that at 10 years old, everyone thinks that their kid's going to be a pro. But ultimately, that does accelerate and fuel the youth game. So, I mean, I dreamed of being a pro ever since I was 8 years old. So the reality of that not happening when I was older was hard to take. But at the same time, it led me through the coaching. So players come in, as long as we're honest and we can offer them good advice and keep them training at a high level, we feel that we can put them in an environment where they at least maximize their potential, whatever that may be.
JT, I know you want to get to some other stuff really quick here, but I just wanted to work this one in because I know we've talked about this specifically in length. Obviously, since NIL was introduced to the college game, everything's changed. The rules have changed. The different sports, they have different allotted amounts they can give to players. And even in the soccer sphere now, with scholarships being reduced and roster sizes being reduced, this is something else that we've touched on in a lot of our conversations. How does that impact you in terms of trying to get these players developed into a point to where not only they can get on a college team, but make an impact on a college team? Because I imagine it has to make it a little bit tougher now that maybe some of those opportunities aren't as, I guess, aplenty as what they used to be. How has that impacted you? Has it impacted you?
You know what? This is a great topic and one we discuss a lot. Look, we're lucky with our programming that ultimately our players are on a level where they're seen by every college. However, you are 100% correct. You know what? It first happened in COVID when players could take a fifth year and then recruitment got squeezed because all of a sudden those freshmen that people were taking a chance on thinking, you know what, they might not. They're always going to take a fifth year senior at that point to then come in and, I mean, a stronger man or woman that's been in the environment for 4 or 5 years is going to beat out an 18-year-old kid who's still developing. So that's when the squeeze really started happening. Recently, I'll be honest, the transfer portal has been something that has been particularly difficult for players to navigate. And these seniors now trying to get college scholarships, there's less on offer than there was, in my opinion, just working in that end of the game. So it's more difficult, but on the flip side, you're now seeing real quality when you go into college. So the quality, I think, will improve just because there's not so much fluff now getting college scholarships. So I do believe that it's just going to be a little bit more cutthroat, harder to get into the college world. And I think you're looking at college coaches now who would rather take a chance on a 2-year player that's in the portal than maybe someone coming out of high school.
Well, and that's a great follow-up question for me because we talk about this a lot too, because we're seeing this in the club environment where at the academy levels, the ECNL, MLS Next, you have players that sign these contracts for 10 months. They're going to go play for their club. Mm-hmm. And then their senior year, they decide that they want to go play on their high school team and maybe fight for a state championship, right? We see it time and time, especially here in Michigan. I can't speak to Indiana. So these kids and their parents are signing contracts with clubs that say, hey, I'm going to stick with you through this process. And then they're deciding, I don't want to stick there. I want to go play high school. So it's creating this contract issue or whatever you want to call it. Do you think that that's also a factor right now in the transfer portal and the NCAA environment? Because you have players who are saying, you know what, I know I signed it, but I still want to go do this. So that's a factor. And then you get in the environment, I'm not getting my playing time. I'm not getting what I want right now. I'm working hard, but I'm not getting it. And ultimately they're like, okay, well, I'm going to go in the transfer portal now. Maybe I can test the waters. And then you think about it from the standpoint of this is that me growing up and you growing up in the soccer environment and in sports was that you had to earn your keep, right? You might not necessarily as a freshman get a lot of playing time because you were a freshman. They wanted to get you acclimated, get you into the system and give you a chance to be successful. And you find that players that sometimes are just thrown into it, they aren't successful because they weren't ready yet, right? You see it time and time again with certain positions too, right? And so trying to balance all of that. Do you think that the way that a lot of clubs right now are forcing kids to stick in these contracts, or these parents and players are walking away from their contracts and then walking into college and now saying, hey, you know what, I got out of the first contract, I can just keep doing this? Do you think that plays into this kind of like this whole environment, or is that more just kind of like just part of the process?
So I think we used to look at a freshman going in and say, look, they're playing 25, 30 minutes a game. And at the end of the season, fantastic, congratulations. To get 600 minutes under your belt in the first season is fantastic. Now a player who gets 600 minutes is looking at other options. And I think there's value in players sticking around in a program, fighting for position. I think it teaches players an awful lot. Growing up, we had to fight. We had to fight for our place all the time, and we couldn't just give up. And, you know, I like players that stick it out, and I think they learn more and they become better in the long run. Don't get me wrong. There's reasons the transfer portal should exist, for sure. Like, and we all know those reasons. Whatever happens in programs, or heavy turnover, or change of face, change of direction by the college program. But I do think it's become an easy out for players now to just say, you know what, I don't want to fight. I'm just going to go. So for me, that's one that I wish some players would stick it out a bit more than they do. But ultimately, players want to play. So if they are just getting 25, 30 minutes a game, they are looking around right now and thinking, I wonder what else is out there.
You know, we had a comment come in from one of our viewers asking Jamie, what path to pro do you prefer, club to high school to college, or club all the way, or lastly, club, high school, pre-pro?
It's got to be club to college for me. I don't think there are many colleges that are going to many high school games, or not that I see. Then you look at showcases that the ECNL and the MLS Next are putting on, and you've got 120 colleges watching games, depending on who's on the field. And the great thing about college showcases is there might be someone on the other team that you don't know about that all these colleges come to watch. So there's opportunity everywhere. They're all at one place. There's however many games going on in a weekend. I just look at what the ECNL and the MLS Next are putting on right now, and I think if you ever wanted exposure, why would you look at something different? So I would say club to college for sure.
Oh, that's actually really good. Here's my last question. I'm going to pass back up to John here in a moment. Is I understand the idea that there is this quote unquote these camps and these ID camps and tournaments and showcases and things like that. You know, what would be your take on like almost like a combine for college kids coming in, kids going and having to do a bunch of different skill sets in front of all these colleges all across the country coming to one central place, watching this, and then maybe a chance for coaches and players to also have a one-on-one interview, almost like that again, like they do at the higher levels, and give these that face-to-face interaction, maybe some one-on-one time, and go through some of that environment plus some games.
So the ECNL have started something at their showcases, which is the national selection games.
Yep.
And that's the best of the best throughout the country playing against each other. We've been lucky enough to have 4 or 5 players playing them on the women's side. We've had 3 now on the boys' side. And honestly, when you go to those games, there's 200 coaches around the field watching them, seeing what the best of the best really is. The level is phenomenal. Obviously, we're invested in the ECNL. However, what they've done is fantastic. Bias aside, it's a great environment, and we were lucky that one of our players actually played in the last one before COVID hit. She scored with about 15 minutes to go, so that all these coaches were thinking about for the next 6 months, where they're not seeing anyone, was the fact that this kid's run past everyone and scored a great goal. So it was great exposure for her. But those environments have been phenomenal. They're also doing goalkeeper combines now, which I think are important, because goalkeepers sometimes at showcases might go out there and touch the ball 3 or 4 times in a game, depending on the matchup. So the fact that they're now offering goalkeeper combines where all these goalkeeper coaches can go and evaluate these kids, I think it's brilliant. So anything like that, I'm behind. Any chance where you've got, an opportunity to watch really, really good players in a competitive environment, I think is going to be good.
Jamie, we kind of let you know earlier in the show that we wanted to touch on the U.S. Open Cup. And kind of what that means here as far as what it did mean versus what it means now. We had our final matches yesterday, and your final 8 are all MLS teams, which I guess is good for, I don't know, I guess for the look at the aesthetic approach to it, looking from the outside in. But at this point, with you being in a position that you are, being a true soccer head, how does it make you feel that with the level of teams, I mean, their NPSL teams are eligible for this if they get to that level, if they win a qualifier, they get to that point. But as a fan, when you look at it, and now you're seeing 8 MLS teams, when they got to the round of 16, 15 of the 16 were MLS teams. There was 1 USL championship team. Are you interested in all at the US Open Cup now, because of it's just really an extension of the MLS season, but those MLS teams probably at this point really don't care. They may not be putting out their best 11 on any given night. How do you feel about it?
As a club, we're interested because we want to qualify. So for us, the thought of, I mean, obviously the first game would be regional if we were ever to qualify. So the chance for us to come up against Indy 11 or Louisville would be incredible for what we're doing in the NPSL. So I look at it as an opportunity from that standpoint. I can only compare it to the FA Cup in England, and the same thing happens. The Premiership teams are normally 90% of the teams left in the last few rounds. There's been talk that the FA Cup's like almost been devalued by some clubs in recent times, but growing up, it was we all dreamed of lifting the FA Cup. So I think from the standpoint of the smaller clubs, I think it's brilliant to be able to come up against an MLS club. I think you probably are aware that it might not be their best team coming on the pitch, and they might be finding minutes for guys. But I'm sure, like anyone, you get to the quarterfinal stages, the last 8 of an Open Cup, you're trying to win it. I mean, you don't want to get to the quarter semis and not win it. So I think that's when the higher level players drop in. And teams start taking it seriously. So, yeah, I like the Cinderella stories of teams of lower league teams coming through. So yeah, it's not something that I've watched too much this season, if I'm completely honest. And like the Pacers game last night in Indianapolis was what everyone was tuned into. But at the same time, it's something that I would support, because as a coach of a lower league club, we would love the opportunity to try and battle it out with one of the big boys. So,
and to that point, it's exciting, the opportunity, and that was something that I even mentioned on a previous show for you guys. That's an amazing opportunity because you guys want to go out and you want to compete against the best. And I think about a lot of the squads maybe in your league or at that level. This is an awesome opportunity, and I've even said that a chance for them to really go out and compete. But on the other side, we've talked about kind of like this half in, half out mentality from the MLS. And that's where it kind of gets tricky to me, because it just feels like, and we're not trying to tear down the US Open Cup. Like, that's the important thing to keep in mind. In these conversations, we're not trying to tear anybody down. We're just frustrated because we feel like everybody should have that shared enthusiasm that you guys or the clubs like you guys have to be able to go out and compete in that. But it's tough to do when you know that even if you win the first couple of rounds, right? Even if you do get deeper into the tournament, you're going to face a professional side that didn't have to fight through the first couple of rounds. They're just kind of dropping in halfway in. I mean, what's your mentality around the like I said, half in, half out mentality that the MLS has carried into this tournament?
Well, I look at El Farolito, which was the NPSL team, right? They got to the 3rd round and they had a brilliant run. And as a league, I mean, the communication going around, the league was so positive and so supportive for them, and we're hoping that they get a massive matchup. I mean, for the MLS, I just don't think you're ever going to be able to fight what they ultimately want to do with their players. I mean, if someone came to me and said, you have to do this as a coach, you'll find a way to do what you want to do in the best. I mean, they're going to prepare for their league game probably, and they're going to prepare for whatever they've got to get them through the MLS season. So if the US Open Cup is not first priority for them. I mean, it's natural they're going to get players time in those games that probably aren't going to play in the MLS. So,
yeah, we've had these conversations, and they've gotten heated at times because it's not so much that the MLS is participating in these games, and we know that if the MLS were to go away, the likelihood of them getting any more notoriety or any more attention would go from what it is now to probably nothing. But the biggest challenge that we have, and we talk about this, is that a team like FC Pride, who, if they get into the U.S. Open Cup, are going to do everything they possibly can to move on.
mhm.
You're going to throw everything you can and then kitchen sink in a game to move on, right? You're going to do that. And then you're going to do that until there's a moment where you're playing against a team in USL League One, USL Championship, MLS, where, again, you're going to throw everything but the kitchen sink at that team. And you're a coach, Jamie, so you know this. When going into games, you're not like I'm assuming you're a realist in this match, that going into a game that if you were playing up against your team, Chelsea, for example, with your current FC Pride team, going into that's not going to be the outcome. The outcome is not going to be really high. You're going to win, but you're going to do everything you can to give yourself the best chances of getting it as competitive as you possibly can as a coach, right? I mean, I'd imagine that's how we look at things, right? So you're going to go in, you can be more defensive minded. You might sit back, 11 players, you can do everything you can to manage that game and play a counterattack game, right? You're going to play the counterattack because that's going to probably be your best chance. You're not playing Chelsea straight up. And I know it's probably a terrible example, but that kind of what it is, though. If FC Pride were to go play against, Columbus Crew, that'd be very much similar in the sense of what you're playing against. So as a coach, knowing that you're going to try and throw everything you can at these games, and then you got an MLS side that's not going to put their best foot forward, does that piss you off as a coach?
You can look at it two ways, right? If we're playing Chelsea, I hope they leave Cole Palmer out. So from that standpoint, I think we're looking at it thinking, going into that game, and you sit there and you think you hope you don't get whacked. And so if that's going to tighten it a bit, then so be it. So I think you said we'll be realistic. I mean, if we're ever playing Columbus Crew, we've had a pretty good journey to get there. Hopefully we're at some level where we can compete, but if they leave a few players out, wouldn't be devastated, to be honest. But yeah, it'd be something like that would just be a great day, great occasion for the club. So yeah, you can see it both ways.
But as a soccer player, though, as someone who has been passionate about soccer your entire, and obviously as a former player, I agree with you. From a perspective of like giving you a chance, of course, you'd like to have a couple players not on the pitch. But as a purist, as someone who loves the game of soccer, wouldn't there is there something to be said about losing a game 4 or 5-0 against a team that should beat you versus tying a team or winning a game that because they decided to not play their best team? Does that on any level bother you as a purist?
We're all geared when you go for athletics, you want to play against the best and see where you're at. So
yeah,
I mean, growing up, you always wanted to play. If you were pulled up to first team training from the reserves, when you're an academy player, it's brilliant. You want to see where you stand, right? So I don't think that'll ever change because that's the way good sportsmen are geared. Always want to be challenged, always want to fight against the best. So yeah, from that standpoint, you want to play. I mean, if anyone said, if you're playing into Miami, do you want Messi on the pitch or not? You want to play against Lionel Messi and see what you can do. So, yeah, I mean, it's both ways. Ultimately, you're never going to take that competitive trait out of the top athletes, I don't think.
We just got the cat out of the bag that, Coach, you're a Chelsea fan. And the end of the season's coming up this Sunday. Big match against Nottingham.
Hey, a massive game,
position. So it's pretty much Liverpool's bag by this one. But one thing that I want to get from your perspective, now we're going to get into the casual talk. Usually in the last 10 minutes, we just kind of let things flow from the hip. But so JT, Nate, and I, we're all play-by-play broadcasters. We call an American soccer game. Yeah. But we're more versed in football. We're more versed in basketball just because that's what's here for us. Those are the big ones here. We talk about teams like FC Pride Elite going up against Chelsea. What chances would myself, Nate, or JT have calling a match at Chelsea in a Premier League game? Do we even stand a chance? Because we don't have the accent. That's our
bloody
that's
hell no.
They would hear my
you're gonna-
American accent. They'd be like, "Who's this?
How
who's this
long would
bloke?"
we get into the broadcast before people would start charging the booth and be like, what the hell's going on here?
Yeah, you're gonna have to add some phrases to to your book.
Yeah, brilliant. Just use brilliant a lot. Just say
Now,
brilliant.
here's what I'll say. When I first moved here, some of the terminology on it was I can't even remember where we were streaming games at the time, but that was 15 years ago, and the commentary has got a lot better now than it was. Because when I first moved over here, there were phrases I've never heard before. But now it's good. Now it's on a par. If you guys listen to the commentary on Premier League games now that's done here in the US, it's all good now. So I don't want to take that dream away from you, John.
No,
I'm going to say that you do a great job.
see, I'm the realist though. Like as much as I love to do that,
yeah,
I just would think about 80,000 people and not hearing it because it's on a broadcast. They're at the stadium and whatnot, but I could just see 80,000 heads going like this.
So here's one for you
back
then.
and be like,
I'll
what
ask
the
you
bloody
same
hell is
question
going
that
on
Jonathan
here?
Just ask me. If you're commentating on a Premier League game, do you want it to be me in the booth who's not done it a lot, or do you want Martin Tyler alongside you?
Well, I mean, both of you. I'll just sit on the side and listen.
Both. All right. Yeah.
I
Can't fake it till I make it with that guy next to me.
I'm just there for the accents at that
can't
point.
do
That's
that.
all I care about. The hell with the match.
This is
That's
brilliant.
great.
This is brilliant, as they would say across the pond.
I
Brilliant.
do say that.
Brilliant.
I do say brilliant. So I'm like
That
a
is
30th of the way there.
That is definitely one of the ways to describe a play across the pond is brilliant. Brilliant, fantastic. But I think this is great. And when we talk about the landscape of soccer in this country, Jamie, the thing that comes up a lot is access.
Mm-hmm.
Access, right? And access can come in a lot of different. When we talk about access, it could be a lot of things. But access to transportation, access to money, access to resources, access to watching. We talked about this yesterday with Tim Sinclair, right? In regards to access to the MLS.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, in a time in which soccer in this country is obviously growing, especially at the youth levels, right? For some reason, it's profoundly successful at the youth levels, but as it starts to rise, as you start to go up in age, it starts to dissipate. And there may be many reasons why that might be, but this deal with MLS and Apple TV, which prohibits access to the masses in regards to the highest level of soccer in this country, is creating this culture, environmental shock, where people don't know how to watch these games. And how do you get people to buy into a game when, if you go across the pond and go to where you grew up in England, UK, and go there and you watch games, it's ingrained in their cells. It is there. It's in their inner being, right? I don't think that actually football is actually in our cells. I think that like the actual NFL football and football is just something that we just grew up culturally. And we created a day behind it, but I don't think it's ingrained in our cells like soccer is across the pond in other parts of the world. From an environmental standpoint, we talk about this. The fan today is going to games, maybe not so much for the soccer, but for the environment. Because there's a community involvement, there's a fan supporters group, there's community. It's like this kind of like really cool thing, which we think is really unique to soccer and not necessarily other sports. How do we get the fan who can actually go and want to watch a soccer game for watching soccer for what it is? Because if you go into these environments, again, in Chelsea, in Tottenham, and you talk about, they're going to watch unbelievable soccer. And the environment is just the added benefit. It's not it's not the reason they're there. They're not there just because it's a stadium. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
At least that's my perspective.
First of all, removing access to watching high-level soccer is not going to grow the game. And, as a coach, we're constantly saying to these players, especially younger players, you need to watch the game. If it's something you truly want to do in college or pro, I mean, you need to be watching and seeing what the pros are doing. And there's so many little things we see on a match day that we're like, if you just watch the game, you would not do that. So to take that away is difficult, or to put, price tags and streaming policies on it is really, really difficult for us to understand, because it's something that we want to grow. And a point you made earlier, if we swing it back to we were talking about cost and barriers at the beginning. Ultimately, there's always going to be a situation where players are going to have to pay because it's not run 100% from the academy down. And without that, you've got a lot of coaches that won't be there. It's a taxing job. The travel, the time you spend, the preparation, meetings with players, parents, other coaches, staff. I mean, it is a full-time job. So from that standpoint, if we remove fees, who's going to pay for the coaches to be sat in the office and on the training field? With that being said, we look at the WPSL and NPSL. We do not charge for those programs. So the good news is the NPSL sent, I think it was 15 players into the MLS last year. So if you want to come and play for us in the NPSL, you can do so without any cost barrier. Everything's paid: transportation, food, hotels. We treat this as a professional team. So if you want to make it and you see the NPSL as a vehicle to do that, you can come and do that with us, which is great. Same on the WPSL. So there are players that obviously the youth soccer system over here misses. And, we're based in Lawrence. There's a lot of players in Lawrence that are playing soccer that do not play at the club level that are very, very good. And then we see a few. Our first tryout for the NPSL, we announced it 3 weeks prior, and we had 120 players turn up out of nowhere. Some obviously coming through the club, but a lot of big catchment. And honestly, we didn't realize how powerful that message was. But removing barriers for anything, you're going to get high participation, I think. So
I wanted to work this in really quick, JT. Jamie, you've been here for 15 years now. Oh, no? Okay. All right. Go ahead. But 2009, which is it's not that long ago, but it's still a decade and a half. It's still a good chunk of time. This isn't a very specific directed question. It's more of a general question, though, because we always talk about how the game is growing, and it's frustrating when you watch the international side for the United States and they're not producing, and some of the teams at the highest levels maybe aren't doing what they should be doing, at least not to the standard of some of the other countries we watch. And I think it's coming. I think it will come eventually. But the areas of growth, when we talk about growth, that's a very general term in the soccer sphere. What have been the biggest areas you've seen that the game has developed in your 15 years here in the States?
So I feel like we're dealing with next generations now on the field, and whether that's players that parents have played or refereeing has got a lot better. Now that you're dealing, it's great now that a lot of the referees actually played, because even 15 years ago, you were dealing with referees and they're coming up to you going, is this the rule? And you're thinking, well, if you played, you know. So now that the level of refereeing has got better, and I would argue that refereeing gets better, there's less arguments between coaches and the environment's a lot more stable, because a lot of it is accelerated by what coaches would determine as critical calls or, decisions going against you. So refereeing has definitely got better. The standard on the field has got a lot better. There's less, what I suppose we would call in some sports here, unforced errors. So there's less technical deficiencies now than there were. You mentioned the US. I mean, I've got my own views on the US team. I think they've tried to model themselves a long time on Spain, where passing the ball 600-700 times a game. And if you look at what the US has actually got, is the best athletes in the whole world. So I don't know why you're not playing into maybe a more direct style to get some of your athletes into the game a little bit. And that's just my view on it. And I feel like they compete a lot more.
JT's been preaching to the choir about that for a long time.
If you play Spain trying to do what they do, trust me, they're better than you at it. I mean, England at their best was play 4-4-2, get the ball wide, get the ball in the box, and have two forwards going after it and midfielders coming down for knockdown. So that was English football when I was growing up, and they were very effective. World Cup semi-finals. Now they've spent a long time changing the DNA of it, and they've got to a place now where they're competing again. But honestly, I'd like the US to do something different. I just think, play a different style. Everyone says they want to pass the ball. I mean, you see these Spanish teams, you're not getting the ball off them in a hurry.
Right.
So do something different, in my opinion. So.
No, it is the best opinion I've heard all week. And we're going to clip that. And
Yeah, I personally thought John's opinion on my hair was
live
better,
rent free in my brain for the rest of my life. But I know it's like, because it's 100% true. We are first off, we talk about all the time. It's like we have this team here in Michigan called Western Michigan University Broncos, right? And they are a team that's they've built themselves on being strong, fast, and direct.
Yeah.
That is their whole model.
Mm-hmm.
And they beat teams doing that because the defender today does not know how to defend it.
Yeah.
These academy players are used to walking into an environment where the ball's just being knocked around and pressure's coming at them when they can manage it. But you throw a ball at 60 miles an hour down their throat, they don't know how to manage that ball. And to be fair, the Spaniards don't know how to defend a direct ball over the top 50 times a game because they're used to a ball just coming at them in 700 different passes. And great. You can have 80% of possession and still lose 3-0. Congratulations, U.S. Soccer. That's what you do. You pass the ball around, you have possession, and you lose to Canada. I mean, so it's yes, this is passion for me. I'm very passionate about this because it's true. Get physical. I mean, go out there and get physical. I mean, like whack players, and I don't mean like to be like dangerous and be like stupid, but like go hard and physical and everything you do. And pass, and then in and out, and then direct diagonal balls.
All our teams play with two forwards because that's a belief of mine. I don't think defenders are taught how to deal with two forwards, so that's why we do it. It's so effective. And my first note, I'd been here about 2 years. I was like, nobody plays two forwards. Everyone was playing 4-3-3 at the time, and it was very easy. You didn't even have to scout. You knew what you were going to play against. And then everyone dropped into the 4-2-3-1 where there's still one forward. So it was, for me, I'd just like to see something different.
This is a question for you, Jamie. Where do you get your coffee from? Dunkin' Donuts, Big B's, or Tim Hortons? Or is there a Starbucks in there? He left out.
There's no Tim Hortons around here, so that eliminates two.
Really?
There's no Tim Hortons in Indianapolis? Wow.
Thank God.
You know what?
Yeah, thank goodness.
Thank God.
Big B's was on it's on my way to work from home. So I'm going to say that, and they do a great cup of coffee as well.
But are you getting it with a bunch of? Are you drinking it black, or are you adding a bunch of stuff into it?
I'm straight black coffee. But I grew up on tea, so
that's what I wanted to hear. That's all I care about. Screw this coffee nonsense.
I mean, as Ted Lasso say, piss water.
Hey, you change the coffee when you have kids.
All right, so here's my last question. I asked it a couple days ago to another one of our guests. I didn't get a chance to do it with Tim, but I want to do it with you real quick. If today was your last day on Earth, if today was the last day, what would be your meal?
God, that's a good question.
Fish and chips.
Now I'd consider myself a little bit more cultured than before, so I'll say steak frites, but that really means steak and chips.
Oh, that's great. It's not the fish and chips, but the steak frites. I like it.
I'll go steak and chips. Yeah, that'll do for me.
Do you get your steak well done and with ketchup, or how do you eat your steak?
I don't get into the ketchups of the world, but I would say medium well.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Well, very, very cool. Well, Jamie, man, we appreciate you stopping on here this morning. It was a pleasure. I'm about to hit our music. We're going to see what's going to happen.
Yeah, great. Thanks for having me on, guys. It was really good fun.
There it is. Either way, we are happy that you stopped on by here today, Jamie. Episode 90 is in the books, everybody. I didn't even mention that at the beginning of the show, but episode 90 is in the books. 10 more until we get to 100. And Jamie, it was a pleasure. FC Pride playing this Saturday night live on the National Soccer Network. For all of us here at Inside the Game, I'm Jonathan Turner. That's Nathan Wangler, John Natale. Be back here tomorrow morning, same time, same place, right here on Inside the Game.
You got it.